welcome Rob to this talk show to talk about PEV in general, portable electric vehicles. Now, there is a article that you shared about how will it's called "How Will You Commute to Work After Lockdown?" This is a BBC article, by the way, and I was reading this, and it really got my interest, and I started to think about what would the world look like in the next 6 months. You know, when this lockdown hopefully subsides, and isn't this the best time to start introducing PEV to the general public in a phased approach as the lockdown, severity slowly eases, and then we can then use this lockdown to monitor the perceived issue of safety. And if we can see that there is an increase in safety, or as in lack of or incident, as a lockdown subside, we can then say, well, maybe PEV is not the best way. Or if we don't see it, then we can think, well, maybe we are right in introducing PEV. So the question is, what do you think about what the transportation is going to look like after the lockdown? Over to you.
Hi, Afeez. Yeah, great having me on. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, it was a very interesting article. It's one that caught me a bit by surprise as well. And like you, it got me thinking about a lot of things. Really, I came up with a couple of thoughts or not total conclusions, because there are a lot of mitigating factors which could swing things one way or the other. My initial thoughts were that the lockdown is the ideal time to introduce PEVs, and several reasons behind that. We know that the government have been doing a trial, if some people would call it different, as Olympic Park for some time now. And we also know that they've been doing further trials in, I think, Portsmouth, Southampton, the west, and up north. I forget how long they've been going on for, but they were kicked off early on in the year. So I haven't heard the results of those trials. But we now have this new situation with COVID-19 and the lockdown. We have empty roads, and what a lot of people did not expect was the positive impact these empty roads have had on the environment. And I haven't heard a bad thing about the improvement to air quality, etc. Now, it would be a shame for people just to simply go back in their cars. I don't think they will. I'll come on to that. And put all the pollutants up in the air and bring us potentially back to square one again. I think this is the ideal time. Indeed, a load of environmentalists would agree on this, that people now realize have found ways to work in a different way. More people have discovered they can work from home. More organizations now, perhaps, I'd like to think, have more faith in their employees working from home. And indeed, in a lot of cases, they're generally more productive anyway because they spend less time in traffic.
Sure.
So what do we have? We have empty roads. Well, significantly emptier roads than before. The government are concerned about bringing personal electric vehicles, e-scooters, whatever, onto roads / cycle lanes, particularly roads from a safety standpoint. And I can understand that, because seeing cyclists around, motorists are used to that, but they're not used to PEVs, electric scooters, on the roads. So what we have here is we have relatively empty roads, much safer roads as a result, where with the gentle easing of the restrictions, this is a perfect time to introduce the public to personal electric transport or personal electric vehicles to use on cycle lanes and roads, as they've been proposing previously for these trials, and get those going first, which will get the public thinking more, actually, they are an ideal social distancing vehicle. Okay, in addition to cycles and manual scooters and walking, etc. Let's give it a go. Let's try it. They're affordable, etc. And I'd like to think that over the coming months, if the governments allow these vehicles, more and more people will adopt them ahead of the cars coming back onto the road, and therefore they're already there as the cars start coming back. And therefore making things safer. They're more used to them because they've seen so many of them on the roads and cycle paths before the lockdown has eased. So that's how I see things moving forward. It's interesting. A lot of people, and I've also thought about this, will say, well, cars are social distancing devices. Well, They are if you're in one on your own, but you drive one to work, you potentially pick up, could potentially pick up the virus at the office, put it on the steering wheel, the gear stick, the handbrake, etc. When you get home, you need to make sure the car's clean, or your partner does, or whoever's going to drive the car next before you can drive off again.
Sure.
And that's a hassle. So that's how I'd like to, perfect world, just Uber, taxis, public transport, and private personal electric vehicles. That's my vision, but that's a long way off.
Yeah, and obviously I picked up on a little bit of what you said there in terms of the social distancing benefits of PEV, and I believe, especially if you have a scooter, or even better, what we have, which is electric unicycle, is probably the ultimate social distancing personal vehicle you can ever have in the world. It's just you.
A little bit of bias there.
Well, I mean, think about it though, and I keep saying this: the electric unicycle, in terms of the amount of space it takes, it's almost the same space that you take. You stand up, so it's got that vertical.
That's true, and you're not holding on to handlebars with viruses on them.
Absolutely, and you're not holding on to handlebars, so which means you cannot transfer the virus onto another surface. It is the ultimate social distancing. But it is in terms of transportation. Now, another question that I also want to ask is that talking about the introduction of PEV and the fact that this is probably the ideal time, unfortunately, but it is still the ideal time to have a phased approach to introducing it to the community and to cities in general, especially London. But also, I'm looking at the financial aspect of it as well. I'm not talking about the personal financial cost savings, which is pretty obvious, but it's also creating a new industry. I think that once you legalize portable electric transportation, and I keep going back to and this is based on my conversation when we went to the parliament several times to speak to people in the parliament, is that safety is always their number one concern. Oh, what about safety? And this safety and that safety. And I think that we have some of the best engineers probably in the world in the UK. We've got some of the best, mathematical brains in the world in the UK. Yes, we have also got some of the best entrepreneurial mindset in the world in the UK. And I think this is possibly the time to introduce PEV, let people know that, I'm talking about companies, let them know that, the government's thinking about this. They're doing trial period. Maybe we should start gearing up and think about other, ways, other type of PEV. How do we make PEV more safer? How do we have better redundancies for EUC, for example? How do we have better brakes? How do we have different type of tires or different type of tire size? Because when you open up the industry and you make it legal, that safety aspect, that risk that the government sees as a risk, will reduce when you have people thinking about that and making safer PEV. And that's another aspect that I think, and that can create, and this is based on a research by McKinsey. I think they estimate that this is a $23 billion industry waiting to be tapped.
Yeah, that does not surprise me at all. It's completely agree with what you're saying. It's I've seen, it is a potential big market, and it's a quick win as far as the government goes, saying, look, we've introduced this new X billion to the UK, whatever that figure may be, market, and we've also at the same time are helping the environment, helping people with disabilities, etc., etc. But the frustrating thing is that the government have a lot on their plate. They have even more on their plate at the moment, and although it is legal to sell these devices, or since making sale of these devices legal, there have been a number of PEV firms who have cropped up and are making good sales and good revenue, despite the legality issue. The sad thing is that because the government are very slow to move these laws forward, is that I'm seeing increasing numbers now of stories where, new e-scooter companies that are set up, say, 6, 10, 12 months ago, are now selling their remaining stock extra cheap because they're going out of business because people, because they're not legal. and people bought them in the expectation that they would be legal. So the government's already harming new industry, as it were, new commerce, by not moving quick enough with the times. Moving on to the safety aspect, yes, I agree. We have some great minds in the UK. I also like to think in other places as well. And these devices can become safer as these devices get developed in the future. But bear in mind, I'm sure you appreciate this, it's not purely obviously down to safety of the vehicle. That helps, yes, but it's the mindset of the rider. And this is where
Yes.
things get a little bit interesting, because everybody knows that they can get in their car and if they wish to, in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, they can floor their car to its maximum speed limits of 100, 120, 200 miles an hour if they wanted to. It is illegal to do so. There are consequences if they do so, some quite severe. There's the option, but they choose not to. They choose to drive safely and within the realms of the law, which is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And this is where it's also, if you like, a little area of frustration for me, because PEVs are new things. I mean, only the other day I was going past 6 cyclists, a family of 6, and they stopped and went, "Wow, that's brilliant," etc. The usual positive response you get.
Yeah.
And it's that. Well, it's different. It's a change. Never seen it before. He looks like he's going really fast. I wasn't instantly, about 15 odd miles an hour.
Yeah.
But it looks like you're going fast. Therefore, they're dangerous.
Yeah.
Therefore,
it's
they're
that
dangerous.
perception.
Yeah. Therefore, if it's dangerous and it's new, we need to tell the government that we deem them unsafe, and you need to put speed limits on, even though we're regularly being overtaken by regular cyclists who are normally doing double the speed that we're doing on our PEVs.
Yeah.
But it's the human aspect of safety is also key as well.
How do you think we can? Just one last question before I let you go. But how do you think we can combat that? I mean, because I ride as well, and the first thing they say is, "That's cool, but isn't that dangerous? How many times have you fallen down?" I'm like, why is that the first thing that comes to your mind? How fast does it go? I mean, how do we change that? Obviously, hopefully through education, but how do we set up that education structure that to educate people and say, listen, guys, I can ride my bicycle at 35 miles an hour and you wouldn't even bat an eyelid, right? You wouldn't even think twice about me going 35 miles an hour on the street. But you see me ride 25 miles an hour, even 20 miles an hour on my EUC, you think, whoa, that's too fast, that's dangerous. Is it because it's a new thing? How do we normalize it? I mean, what do you suggest we do?
To me, the only way to normalize it is through numbers. And that can only be helped by making them legal. The more EUC, if we just take EUCs in this case, we'll put one wheels and boosted boards to one side for now. If you just take EUCs, which are, in my view, more unusual to people, the more they see them being ridden by more people, and the fewer people they see actually falling off them, then there's the education right there. And people are very surprised when they say, "Well, have you not hurt yourself on it?" And I went, "Well, I stepped off a few times while learning, but since I've learned, I haven't really fallen off." And they were very surprised. But it's only when they see lots of these things going about on cycle paths and roads, subject to the government making them legal, is when they'll go, "Oh, yeah, actually." And when they see them being overtaken by cyclists as well.
I like that. Thank you so much, Rob, for coming on the show. I think it would be good to see how this goes. In terms of the legalization, at least set up a 6 months trial period in London right now. That will be, I think, is the best time to set up a trial period and to just monitor how it goes.
I think we're past the trial periods. I think so. I mean, they had a good crack at Olympic Park. I believe that was successful. I haven't heard any scare stories from the other trials in Southampton, Portsmouth, and London. I think was included in this recent trial. I think we're past trials now. I think we're now at a point where, they can't. It does not seem right for them to even extend the trials, given where we are now, which nobody expected us to be in a situation. We're now at a point where the government can get a very quick win both environmentally,
Yes.
congestion-wise, and everything
Yes.
by just saying, right, trials are over, we're happy with the trials, so therefore, even if there's a speed limit, which I don't recommend, therefore, from date X, whether it's a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road, PEV users can ride their PEVs on cycle paths and roads the same as cyclists.
Awesome.
And that's how it should be.
And that's how it should be. And,
but they need,
go on.
Sorry, but they need to do that sooner rather than later. They need to demonstrate that these vehicles are legally viable means of transportation before people get back out in their cars again.
Yes, because I think this is the best time to really showcase the benefit of this type of vehicles. Now,
correct.
Yeah, and just one last thing before you go, you mentioned something about speed limit. I'm also a firm believer in that as well. I think on road speed limit, yes. On the spot, fine, yes. Device speed limit, dangerous. Definitely for EUC.
Yeah, no. I completely agree. It's a speed limit. The same speed limit that they apply to cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the same laws that they apply to cyclists for riding dangerously fast. That potentially putting other people in danger. That's it.
That's it.
Simple as.